Good morning. Thank you for joining us at this early hour on a Sunday. I'm going to start out by giving an overview as well as a in-depth look at the aesthetic aspects of the works from Africa in the exhibition. During the second half of the 19th century, sculptural artifacts from equatorial Africa began to arrive in Paris, Berlin, and Brussels. The subsequent awakening to their visual power by artists who encountered them in colonial ethnographic displays, flea markets, antiquarian galleries, and even their fellow artists' studios, irrevocably altered the history of art at the dawn of the 20th century. These newly discovered traditions were gathered by European explorers, colonial officials, and missionaries haphazardly from thousands of communities across the vast and difficult-to-penetrate landscape of what is today southern Cameroon through Congo. Until now, it has not been possible to fully consider the cohesiveness of the vision that originally inspired their creation. Divorced from their cultural and religious associations for over a century, their embrace by modernism as pure sculpture has come to dominate their appreciation. In a sense, these works are no strangers to New York museum-goers, going back many generations. A significant number of them were among the over 600 works of African sculpture displayed in 1935 when the Museum of Modern Art organized a pioneering exhibition of epic proportions, African Negro art, as an homage to the importance of African art to modernism. A half-century later, in 1984, they were again among the hundreds of works of non-Western art featured at MoMA in the landmark Primitivism in 20th Century Art. One of the essays in the catalog that accompanies that exhibition by the French scholar Jean-Louis Paudras chronicles with a great deal of precision the fact that works from the equatorial region were a significant part of the earliest wave of African material culture in the West. Nonetheless, in both 1935 and 1984, the artistically distinctive and culturally coherent corpus that is at the heart of eternal ancestors was buried in these colossal overviews that considered works generically and on entirely formalist terms. Reunited here at the Metropolitan and considered through a regionally and conceptually focused lens, we perceive an artistic movement that ranks among the high points of human creativity. For one final month, we have the opportunity to behold this legacy of Africa's greatest sculptural creations, assembled from the most important repositories of African art in the West, with fresh eyes and on its own terms. A century ago, a legendary conversation between Vlaminck, Derain, and Picasso debated the merits of the sensational femme female figure that is the crowning jewel of this exhibition. They variously pronounced her nearly as beautiful as the Venus de Milo, comparable in beauty to that landmark of classicism, and surpassing the beauty of that centerpiece of the Louvre. The modernists recognized this rightfully as a dazzling sculptural achievement by any measure. What they fundamentally neglected was an awareness of what spiritual and intellectual precepts informed the artist's vision of a regal female subject who is the embodiment of strength and elegance, gracefully poised and profoundly introspective. It is truly remarkable that this aesthetic can transcend cultures and resonate with those of us from a fundamentally different cultural background. We should understand, however, that no matter how we attempt to assess this Central African aesthetic, we can never fully grasp the full visual impact these works had on the people of the region, because they were an integral part of their spiritual beliefs. We've assembled what are considered to be among the most beautiful creations from the African continent in this exhibition. When presented with the opportunity to reintroduce such seminal icons like the Black Venus, it was time to situate them into a broader context so that their larger significance might be fully understood. Toward that end, the following are among the questions the exhibition seeks to address, and that will be discussed by today's various speakers. What role did these creations play in the lives of their patrons? What cultural ideals and concepts fundamentally inform their imagery? What are the meaningful art historical parallels developed in other major world traditions? What was it about these works that so engaged the interest of the European avant-garde? And finally, what is the history of the societies with which this art is identified? Eternal Ancestors differs in perspective from previous treatments of the African works assembled in several ways. It considers how their intertwined aesthetic and spiritual dimensions instilled wonder and awe in their original viewers. While the critics of the early 20th century emphasized the significance of these works as an alternative to classicism, the artists themselves do reflect on the fact that they recognized in them profound spiritual qualities. In seeking to afford a more expansive and multifaceted understanding of works that have come to be synonymous with the very summit of African artistry, the exhibition has benefited from the insights of art historians and scholars in a range of different fields. Today's speakers reflect these points of view, and their work contributed importantly to the content developed both in the publication and installation. I am delighted that you will hear from them directly over the course of the day. I want to use this opportunity to thank Joseph Lowe, my colleague in the Education Department, for organizing this event so flawlessly, and also Yael Biro in my department for her many invaluable contributions to its success as well. A reliquary is a work that serves at once as a vessel for a sacred particle of physical matter and whose design may expand upon the significance of that content. The reliquary developed as a sacred art form not only in Africa, but also in Europe and Asia. In Equatorial Africa, however, regional artists focused their talents on the development of a diverse repertory of these ancestral shrines for sacra. The relics preserved within were precious for their association with an exalted ancestor selected to serve as an advocate with the divine on behalf of the living. As St. Augustine eloquently noted, given that we are defined by our corporeal being, matter derived from the body constitutes the most precious human manifestation. In many different societies, such tangible vestiges of notable forefathers have served as an enduring connection through which they were venerated and invoked by the living in times of need. Eternal Ancestors opens with a sacred conversation between works that relate to three distinct worldviews: Buddhism, Christianity, and ancestor veneration practiced in Equatorial Africa. In this extraordinary convergence of masterpieces, we address the role of sacred relics as the impetus for creating works of art in these different faiths. Denise Patrilide is the curator of Asian art here at the museum, who selected the works from her department presented in the installation. She will be speaking to us about the earliest recorded tradition of relic veneration and related forms of Buddhist representations.